Hi, welcome back to Talking Insights. I'm your host, Antonio, and in today's episode, we explore one of the most ambitious and inclusive studies ever conducted in our industry. The Brand Inclusion Index, developed by Kantar, surveyed over 20,000 people across 18 countries to understand how consumers experience diversity, equity, but also inclusion in the brands that they interact with. Now, what makes this research unique is that it captures the voices of underrepresented groups, shining a light on the gaps between what we perceive versus the real lived experiences. I'm joined today by Valeria Piaggio, Kantar's inclusive growth leader, to unpack what this index is, what it reveals, and not only why inclusion is a driver of growth, but also how can brands move from the intention to real impact. Stick around. It's a great conversation, and I do really hope that it sparked something in your mind when creating projects or products or whatever it is, and that not only learned something, but also starts a conversation about this theme, because I think it's a very important one. So without further ado, here's Valeria. Well, Valeria, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Talking Insights podcast. I want to start by asking, what's the Brand Inclusion Index? I know that we're going to mention a lot of it throughout this conversation, but I want to start by asking what it is and how, what brands can do with it and what they can learn from this whole conversation.
Certainly. The Brand Inclusion Index is Kantar's take on creating a benchmark for global inclusive marketing. It's a first of its kind because the objective was to capture all the voices of people who are often overlooked in research or in marketing and sometimes even misrepresented. And we know that these are populations that are growing in size, in buying power, in cultural influence, and will deliver brand growth. So the Brand Inclusion Index is the first of its kind, giving a voice to those people who are high growth and yet underrepresented.
And what is this concept of brand inclusion? Because
Yeah.
it's something that has kind of changed throughout the years, right? Like I know
Yeah.
that, I mean, I can imagine that people now expect something from brands. Like 5 years ago, it was something else different. Like nowadays, people just expect something else, right? What is
Yeah.
this concept all about?
It's all about checking, making sure that brands are seeing consumers, that they feel seen, that they feel respected, they feel safe, which is something that we didn't have to check on before, that they are feeling welcomed and valued. So it's based on all these consumer touch points that create a brand experience for people. And it has been evolving. Today, it is about access, it is about representation and belonging. In the past, these were things that some brands were taking for granted and some were doing as a nice to have, thinking about, well, maybe I'll have something on the side for these, niche population. And it's an evolution to thinking about inclusion as a source of brand growth. We know that inclusion delivers that brand growth that in some cases it's hard to find, especially in mature categories. So today it is a business imperative. It is business 101. Stop thinking about inclusive marketing as a niche and think about it as expansive marketing.
It's interesting. Like a couple of months ago, we were here on the podcast. We were talking about greenwashing and how the people nowadays expect something different from these new brands that have like the so-called sustainable products, and how people are more, I don't know, hard on, is it really sustainable? Is it what you're saying? Is it really true? Is that something that you can also see with inclusion and what brands are saying that they're inclusive, but at the same time, they're probably not? And is people more
Yes,
hard on that?
totally. In inclusion, instead of greenwashing, we have pink washing, we have rainbow washing, we have all sorts of cost related washing And this is a call for brands to stop performative marketing and start demonstrating and showing up in ways that are authentic to who they are as a brand, that speak about their values and connect with consumer values. And when I said before, that this is an imperative today, when you think about today and the near future, we see that younger generations, millennials, Gen Zers, Gen Alpha, because of who they are, the diversity they bring to the marketplace, they are demanding inclusion. It's a standard. I don't know how else to put it in a way that feels that this is not a nice to have. This should be embedded in your brand strategy, in your brand executions, in everything you do, and needs
Yeah.
to come from within.
Because you might be losing customers for not having those things right.
We actually measure that with the brand inclusion index. Sometimes it's hard to measure the return on inclusion because you can't really say that, an inclusive campaign, attribute the results to those efforts. But we actually measured what brands are leaving on the table when they are missing these high growth populations. We created a metric for that, looking at the buying power of these segments, the frictions they are experiencing when in touch with brands. And what we discovered through the brand inclusion index is that people are experiencing discrimination in commercial locations when they are ready to buy, when they are ready to engage with brands. So we created that, and it's over 5 trillion just in the US, just in the US. And you can take that to each market, to each brand, and measure what is the gap. And by closing those inclusion gaps, you're going to deliver growth.
And it's interesting that you mentioned US because I feel like this is a global issue. This is a global problem. And I know that probably some areas of the world are more conservative, some others are more open to this changes and nomenclature of things. What are some of these groups and the underrepresented groups or underserved groups that you uh, find that are mostly left behind when creating these types of strategies?
I have to say, what I'm going to respond to is in general terms, based on a global study, and this was 18 countries, over 23,000 people. It was very, uh, you know, vast in terms of what we captured. And what we found was that there are certain populations that do not see themselves well represented by brands and also are experiencing these frictions in commercial situations. And the pattern was clear. It was people with disabilities, and especially those who have thinking and learning differences, so neurodivergent consumers who are within Gen Z alone, 30% of Gen Zers. So it's not a small group. And I would say it's growing because we also have aging populations, and we know that with aging comes disability. So these are segments that are very significant. The second segment was the LGBTQ plus population. Whether it was gender identity or sexual orientation, in many cases, brands are not getting things right when it comes to positive representation. It's not just about visibility, it's about positive representation that feels true to who these people are. And then some ethnic and racial groups that, depending on the country, are overlooked. And in many cases, they feel the bias, they feel the misrepresentation. So the stereotypes that come into play, especially in advertising, when you only have 30 seconds to tell a brand story, and those shortcuts often lead to misrepresentation. So those are the groups that I would say we have identified as vulnerable populations that we should pay attention to because these are growing groups around the world.
And it's interesting that you mentioned the ethnicity because for some countries, even and I'm gonna give the example of India because it's one that we studied recently. But even in India, there's so many types of ethnicities religion, so many things that come into play, and it's just one country. And sometimes I feel like the brands, they misrepresent the different people, the different types of the audience that they have, right? They just focus on it's just men and women. It's these two types of people, and that's it. So I guess that brands should also look out for that, like even in their own country, look out for these things. What are some actions that brands could take to try to close these gaps, or at least think in a different way when they're trying to come to the market or announcing something new? What are some of these actions that brands could change?
I would say first start with the brand strategy, which we measured in our index, where it actually has 4 dimensions. And you need to start with a very integrated, cohesive, and clear brand strategy, because if that fails, then you will see the effects throughout inclusive marketing efforts, the shopper experience, and so forth. So start with that. Number one. Then audit. How does that brand experience looks like, not just for people like you, but for people from all walks of life. And try to assess, where is your brand falling behind? Said maybe at a retail location. Is it when they are visiting your website? Where is it that brands are, letting people down? And then strive for creative but also authentic representation. We did a lot of work capturing the voices. We used AI solutions to capture those voices and analyze what people want from brands. And the message was super clear. They want authentic and local representation. They want, that body representation, that appearance to be real, to be authentic, to be positive. They were very tired of, inspirational messages that feel like mandates to many. They want the local accent. They want the darker skin tones. They want to see people like them represented by brands. So I would say those were the 3 things that I can point that are easy steps, easy checkpoints to ensure that you are creating the most engaging, welcoming, and positive brand experience for everyone.
And technology, I got to talk about it. How do you see technology affecting this problem in specific? Because it's not only about what you see in the ads on the television or the type of products that you have on the supermarket, but it's also about technology, right? Like, how is inclusion with all these new tools, with the AI that everyone talks about, or with the virtual reality, with the virtual experiences? How does technology and inclusion go?
They go hand in hand. Technology it's a huge enabler, an equalizer, but it's also very dangerous if not used well, responsibly with ethics in mind. We need to think about, every time we use technology, about putting humanity, our humanity first. We are already seeing the effects of misuses of technology and specifically artificial intelligence, because it is building on models, on information, on data that in many cases is already biased, because it already looks for the majority, the generic ideas, and it's, sometimes not taking into account the voices of these, specific groups of society, eliminating that uniqueness that we need to celebrate when we do inclusive marketing. So it can be used in both ways as an enabler, because it can also give us the resources to amplify and to listen to the voices of people who sometimes don't have the opportunity. It also gives creators from all walks of life the opportunity to be very productive and very efficient. So it does give them the tools. It gives people who maybe need this technology because they have a disability, because they have a thinking or learning difference, and artificial intelligence could provide with these solutions for them. So if used well, the potential is immense, but we do have to think about it, and we do have to go at it with intention of using it that way. And sometimes that is lacking. We're so going for efficiency, going for commercial results that we forget to embed that humanity in the process.
You have an example or a suggestion of a campaign or a brand that did something that you looked and was like, yeah, they got it. They understood the assignment and they finally understood it and did it. You have like an example for this?
Uh, I have one in mind, but it's from a nonprofit. So I'll skip that one so we can give your audience, an example from a commercial brand. I did love a Racket campaign for Vanish that was about autistic people and bringing to life what are the feelings they have around clothing and the security that some of these items of clothing provides. And the brand captured it very well in terms of following the life of a young teenage girl who is autistic and was relying on a hoodie, on a sweatshirt, I don't know, around the world it's called many things.
Yeah.
How, washing that item and making sure she had it every day was critical for her well-being. But what I loved about the campaign was that I actually heard about how it was produced. The creative team took into account, the needs of the talent who was autistic, and they created a production environment where those needs were taken into account. So there was positive representation in the commercial because behind the camera, things were done in a way that ensured that positive experience for those participating in the commercial.
Yeah. That's a very good point because it's not only about the end product. Sometimes the whole process of creating the ad or whatever it is, it also needs to be inclusive and it also needs to, I don't know, you can just ask everyone to be on board, but because people have different needs and y- the whole set, the whole production should also be inclusive for
Yeah.
all of those things.
In the best world, ad is a reflection. It shines, all those brand values, all those, inclusive research practices that went into uncovering that human insight that is unique and differentiating for the brand. Then, it's executed in a way that brings the best creatives and allows them to be their best selves, give them agency to bring that message to life. And then it reaches consumers wherever they are, right? The media, everything then aligns with that. And hopefully that message is then carried over as consumers engage with the brand, and whether that is while shopping or while getting in touch with a customer service representative. So it should be a reflection, not just an illusion.
That's such a great way to finish and to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Valeria, for it. I think it
Yeah.
was very enlightening, and I hope that whoever's listening gets something new or think about something in a different way when creating whatever they're creating, either a campaign or a project or product or whatever it is. At least just think about more than they can do and yeah, includes more than what it's normal and break out the form. So Valeria, thank you so much for the conversation and for your time.
Thank you, Antonio, for having me.
And that's all for today with our conversation with Valeria on the Brand Inclusion Index. If you want to know more about it, there's a link in the description of this episode, whether you're listening on the streaming services or watching on YouTube. There should be a link under there. For me, that's all for today. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you back next week. All right. Bye.